From insane trapdoors to insane medical experiments. Stay tuned to number 1 to find out the most insane abandoned prisons in the world. Number 10. Eastern State Penitentiary. Eastern State Penitentiary is one of the most renowned prisons in the world, operating from 1829 to 1971, where it was, and we use this next word lightly, home to Al Capone. He even had something of a luxury suite set up for his personal living quarters, though it's in far from a luxury state these days. The staff felt the extreme acts of torture and violence would improve the behavior of the inmates, and as such, grisly acts were frequently performed. Such examples include a winter tradition in which the staff would steep prisoners in cold water and then lock them out in the freezing winter to air dry. Though it's been closed since 1971, it remains open to the public, serving as a museum to its old self. Many parts of the prison remain the same as they were, only more decrepit, a victim of time. Highlights of the tour include the old barber chair in surprisingly good condition, and of course, Capone's old room. Number 9. Bodmin Jail. Situated in Cornwall, England, Bodmin Jail was created by King George III in 1779 to contain more than 150 criminals. While it was maybe a little more empathic than some prisons, for example, it was the first British prison to allow prisoners their own cell, it was also home to regular public hangings, with roughly 55 executions taking place between 1785 and 1909. So, on the upside, you got to have your own room. On the downside, you might get hanged to death. I guess all accommodations have their flaws. There are many stories that Bodmin Jail is still haunted to this day, though that may have been proven fake by the now infamous hoax. Reality TV show Most Haunted saw Derek Acorah, a man who is either a world-renowned psychic or an international laughingstock with stupid hair, depending on who you ask, visit sites that were apparently haunted, and he would regularly be possessed by spirits and pass on their message. In Series 6, Episode 1, he visited Bodmin Jail, where he was told that a South African called Creed Kafer had died there. True to form, Derek claimed he had been possessed by and spoken to Mr. Kafer, which is interesting, because Creed Kafer is a made-up name, an anagram for Derek Faker, and had been a ploy to expose Acorah as a fake. Number 8. Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary. One of the most notorious prisons in the world, Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary was the home to over 1,500 prisoners during its tenure, from 1934 until it closed its doors in 1963. Located on the famous island in the San Francisco Bay, the site was chosen due to the cold waters and strong currents in the area, which were thought to have made the island unescapable. Housing some of the most notorious and high-risk prisoners in the country, the prison records claim that no prisoners ever escaped. However, it should be noted that of the 36 prisoners who attempted, 5 were never accounted for. They were presumed to have drowned in the bay. But I think Sean Connery's character from The Rock would disagree. Today you can take a tour of the former prison and even get locked into the same cells that used to hold their prisoners. Number 8. Atlanta Prison Farm. From 1945 to 1995, Atlanta was home to a prison. And no, not the one from The Walking Dead. It remained pretty much untouched until October 2009 when it caught ablaze. Firefighters decided that tackling the fire simply wasn't worth it, and the fire was left to tire itself out. While the building didn't burn down completely and it remains abandoned, the fire left it so unsafe that it is now illegal to visit. As such, its primary purpose now is serving as a practice ground for local firefighters. Let's hope they're not practicing how to give up on putting out a fire like they did back in 2009. Number 6. Pottawattamie County Jail. This Iowa prison was something truly unique. Founded in 1885, its borderline artistic structure earned it the nickname Squirrel Cage Jail. Like something out of Harry Potter, the prison cells kept changing places, though it wasn't the magic of Dumbledore that made the cages hop around like the roaming staircases of Hogwarts. A giant water-powered wheel spun the rooms around in an attempt to disorient the prisoners, deter escape attempts, and to reduce the number of prison officers required. But not all inventions are perfect, and this was one that needed a little more fine-tuning before it was put into practice. Unfortunately for the prisoners, but fortunately for the fans of all things gruesome, the wheel frequently malfunctioned as the gears jammed. This led to parts of inmates' bodies getting crushed, or worse, some inmates would find their whole bodies trapped between walls from which they could never be retrieved, meaning they were left to rot. Now beyond repair, the infamous squirrel cage jail still stands, abandoned and with skeletons trapped in its walls. I really regret comparing it to Hogwarts now. That ruined Harry Potter for me. Before we move on, don't forget to click the like button on this video and subscribe for more videos from Zero to Hero. Number 5. Old Salem Jail. While it may share a name with the adorable cat from Sabrina the Teenage Witch, the Old Salem Jail was far from cute. Erected in 1813 and standing tall until 1991, it was, at the time of its decommission, one of the oldest prisons in America. This run-down granite complex has become a firm staple of local folklore, with stories about its tenure ranging from the paranormal to the downright disgusting and perverse. Brad Upton, a corrections officer who had once worked there, said, "I refrain from retelling any stories because no one believes them. You were either there or you weren't." There is a terrifying weight to his words. Whatever went down in the Old Salem Jail has been deemed a little too dark for us common folk to know anything about. What we do know now is that its last major renovation was in 1845, which meant that from then until 1991, prisoners were living with truly antiquated standards, such as buckets instead of toilets. In the end, it would not be the lack of facilities, nor the cockroaches that swarmed the place, that brought Old Salem Jail to its knees, but good old-fashioned paperwork. In 1984, inmates successfully sued Essex County on the grounds that the jail offered unsafe living conditions. 850 inmates shared a whopping $1,395,000 settlement. This led to inmates being moved 7 years later to a new $53 million facility in Middleton. But sometimes home is home and you just don't want to move. 13 inmates refused to leave the groggy cells that they had come to love and were dragged out by riot squads as they threw buckets of urine. Number 4. Isle of Prachi Jail. Built in 1563, the Isle of Prachi was once a giant castle, but it quickly fell into decline. In 1815, King Ferdinand II had big ideas. Expanding the perimeters of the castle, its ruined remains were transformed into a giant prison island. But don't let the fact that this prison was once a gorgeous castle, and a spacious one at that, trick you into thinking the inmates had cozy living conditions. Far from it. The jail at the island of Prachi was one of the more gruesome and rotten ones on this list. Riddled with decay and rot, the inmates endured horrifically unclean circumstances. They were essentially dumped here, isolated from the world, where they were left to slowly rot. It wasn't until 1988 that this literal cesspit was finally closed. Number 3. Essex County Jail. Though it was rendered out of order way back in 1970, the Essex County Prison endures to this day and is a common living space for the homeless. But time has not been kind to the Essex County Jail, which has been thoroughly beaten by decay and fire damage. In 2001, a serious fire severely damaged the site. But seriously, why does someone keep setting fire to prisons? Anyway, it's not all doom and gloom for the Essex County Jail. This poor run-down and burnt facility had 15 minutes of fame when filming for the movie Malcolm X took place there in 1991. Number 2. Moundsville West Virginia Penitentiary. Of all the abandoned prisons on this list, the Moundsville West Virginia Penitentiary is one of the most notorious, but not because of its inmates, but because of its staff. Founded in 1876, in the 100+ years that it existed, its staff gained a reputation for beating, hanging, and electrocuting prisoners. The electric chair in question, affectionately nicknamed Old Sparky, is still on display at the site and is shown off as part of a tour. In the 1960s, the prison reached its peak population, roughly 2,000 inmates, and was unbearably overcrowded. It remained overcrowded for a long time, and come 1986, this played a part in one of the most famous prison riots in American history. Cell security was loose due to ongoing renovation work. A number of prisoners were cons and were experts at picking locks. The fact that it was January 1st meant that they were understaffed, presumably because the guards had called in sick with hangovers. All of these factors came together like a terrifying symphony. Prisoners leapt free from their cells and overpowered the limited number of staff and took them hostage. Luckily, no officers were seriously hurt, though a few prisoners died in the chaos. Number 1. Holmesburg Prison. The Holmesburg Prison backstory sounds more like a laboratory from a science fiction comic book than a real-world prison. Prisoners were routinely victim to non-therapeutic medical experiments, and a 2-year investigation revealed that hundreds of inmates had been victims of sexual assault at the hands of the staff. The list of what those incarcerated at Holmesburg endured is truly gruesome. Post-World War I, they were used for chemical testing. During the Cold War, they were victim to radioactive testing. Some were even deliberately infected with diseases. While in later years, many of these experiments were done with the full consent of the prisoners in question, and they were even compensated, the early days of the Holmesburg prison experiments were a touch more horrifying. Some inmates had fragments of cadavers stitched into their backs, and some even had their sweat glands cut out of their bodies. Let us know what you think about these abandoned prisons in the comments below, and take care.